malungil litasil silmer kami wa ada bela nos milo mes oreng setiang special program kin lo menteri dar adra IOU ngartiang wan radira merigel magulungi ter kami we di botol ko ya tokora barda saba amal engage lo menteri da tirkan teru okya garigi da el alitasil. So with this time, I would like to give the opportunity to both of you to introduce yourselves and then maybe tell us, are you guys professors at EOU or do you work at admissions or what are you here for?
Yes. So my name is Genesis Meddards and I am the Director of Admissions. So yes, I am in admissions. And I am from Eastern Oregon, where the university is located in La Grande. I'm from there, and I'm really happy to be here to talk to students and families and give them more information about EOU.
And Ali, I am Bini Moses Masubad, and I am from Eastern Oregon University. My department is Student Diversity and Inclusion. I'm the director. Within the work that I do is we do transition and retention work for students who are matriculating into the university. We also work with international student programs and multicultural student services.
Okay. So I understand there are a couple of Palau students in Oregon, Eastern Oregon University at the moment. Could you share about how many Palau students are there?
Yeah, we have at this point between 20 and 25 students at EOU. We're very excited, to have graduated 6 this year. We've been very consistent in graduating between 4 and 6 students and also getting students to come. Due to COVID, we didn't get a lot of students last year, so we are here this year because of kind of the Palauan students in Eastern are very involved and active in everything from clubs and organizations, leadership, community work, as well as their academic studies. And so they really impact the college experience for themselves, but also for the general student population. And so we value their presence in our university, and we're excited to have them, and part of why we're here too.
So I understand that both of you came to Palau with the purpose of recruiting students to the university. Could you describe the application process and how does one get to EOU?
Yes, that is, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's exactly why we're here. We are hoping to help students go from being here in Palau at their school to attending Eastern Oregon University and liking it and loving it. So the application process is very simple. I will just say that we've eliminated a lot of the barriers that students have had in the past in terms of applying to EOU. And really simplified the application process. So right now it's as easy as filling out the application online, and we're working with students all week to complete the online application, and then they need to go to their school, get an official copy of their transcript and bring it to us, and then we'll take care of the rest essentially. There is an English proficiency requirement, and we're working through some of those. So if they fill out the application and bring us their transcripts, they're really close to doing everything they need to become admitted. In the past, we've had students take the SATs or take the TOEFL.
Is that a requirement now?
We've eliminated the SAT requirement, so it's not required for admissions, and it's also not required for scholarships. So students can apply to the university and they can apply to scholarships without having any SAT or ACT scores, which is just new during COVID. So that's something we've eliminated. But I would say the application process is very simple, but we are happy to help students through that process. And then beyond the process, because that's when the challenging things come up. Beanie's been helping folks with scholarships and actually getting from Palau to EOU. That's where students need more support, and that's why we're here.
So do we apply through EOU's website? Or?
Yes. So if you go to the EOU website, eou.edu, right on the front page is a big blue button that says apply. So students will just hit that, and they'll be able to apply.
Mm-hmm. I also understand that there is some kind of an agreement with Palau Community College. Could you describe how can someone who is
Yes.
transferring a student?
Yeah, we currently have an articulation agreement with Palau Community College. We worked about a couple of years ago. We worked on it to again eliminate a lot of the barriers. And one of the things that we did allows for many of the college classes that students are taking at PCC. We're able to transfer them with and honor those credits so that students are not having to go back a class level and they just continue. So especially if they graduate with their liberal studies associate's degree, they automatically will just go in junior year. If a student is coming with a different type of a degree, they may need to take a few general education courses, but most of those specialized classes that they took, whether it's computer science or IT or business, will actually translate into the majors.
How big is EOU, like in terms of population, student population, and the different programs that? What are the different couple of examples of the different programs that EOU has to offer?
So EOU is a really good fit, could be a really good fit for Palauan students because of our size. So we have about 1,600 students on campus, and the town where Eastern Oregon University is located, La Grande, only has about 13,000. So we're very much a small school in the mountains. Our average class size is 22. So when the students come to EOU, it's very similar to classes that they've taken here in terms of the student population, right? So they don't going to a U.S. university doesn't mean that you're going to a university or a university where the classes will have 60 plus people. Again, the average class size is 22. And if students go to PCC first and then transfer, the class sizes will be even smaller for transfer students. So very much a small school in a small town. And it works really well for Palauan students going from small Palau to a small school in a small town. Yeah, so I think we could be
much of a shock
exactly
compared to other major big universities.
Right.
I suppose the student to teacher ratio is good enough.
Right.
Yes, yeah. And I think I would add that one of the things that really makes the small class size valuable for students is you really build a relationship with your faculty, and you're able to work with them in a way that allows you to get the additional like lived experiences and also the internships and the technical trainings. I went to a much larger school before EOU, and was really helpful for me to be able to work with my faculty to get recommendation letters, to be able to get all the needed references that allowed me to kind of move on to grad school, but also to get the kind of jobs and the trainings that I wanted to. Coming from a bigger university, I oftentimes had to introduce who I was to my faculty because I was in classes of like 80 or more. And in EOU, you really get to know your teachers. They give the students their cell phone numbers. They invite them to dinners. It's a really good way to build that relationship.
That's a really good information to know because I suppose it's a small school, so it's more like a family compared to coming from small PCC and then get a shock of major universities out there. So that's really good. I saw your video on Facebook with regards to students. You mentioned some good news with regards to student tuition. Could you explain that?
Yes, of course. And I feel so many people have seen that video. We didn't know that. We knew students would be interested, but we've been surprised and excited by how much interest there has been just from Beanie posting the video. So yes, students who come to Eastern Oregon University from a COFA nation, Palau is included in that, so Palau, FSM, and the Marshall Islands, they will automatically get in-state tuition. So that means they're, in comparison with prior years, their cost for tuition and fees is about cut in half, even more than 50%. So it's a really exciting time to come to EOU because it's much more affordable now.
Moving on, you mentioned that the size of the university is quite small. Are there a lot of programs that are offered for students with various interests?
That's a great question. We have about 24 academic majors on campus, and then several other minors. So students can, for example, major in business administration and then get a minor in computer science. I know we were talking with the student from Palau a couple of days ago, and he was really interested. He's like, I can't decide between music and theater. And I said, why don't you just major in music and get a minor in theater, or vice versa? Yeah, he was really excited about that. But students do have the opportunity to get majors and then minor. Mm-hmm.
Is it okay if I ask the graduation rate?
Yeah.
Yes. So we don't as much share our 4-year graduation rate because many students will graduate. You can graduate in 4 years. So I will just say 4 years. If you come to Eastern Oregon University as a freshman or as a transfer student, you should be able to graduate in 4 years, no problem. None of our classes are impacted, which means if you can't get into Biology 101 this year, you have to wait a whole nother year to get in. So our 4-year graduation rate, we don't publish it, so I don't know exactly what that is, but I will just say that if a student comes to Eastern Oregon University and wants to graduate in 4 years, they definitely can. Yes, they definitely can. But if the students want to take a bit longer, which is what I was saying at the beginning, if they want to take a little bit longer, then they can, of course, extend it an extra year or two. I think something to consider when you think of going beyond 4 years is the cost, right? So that's something for students to consider. Even though EOU is more affordable now, we want to try to get students graduated in 4 years. But it shouldn't be a problem if they come to EOU. Every single student is assigned an academic advisor, and I'll let Beanie speak to this in just a moment since she's the secondary advisor. But every single student who comes to EOU students can't even register for classes without connecting with an academic advisor. So they really have the guidance in terms of selecting their courses, ensuring that they're on a pathway for graduation and completion. We don't just say, come to Eastern Oregon University from Palau and then you're there. Yeah, there's a lot of academic support, and I'll let Beanie talk about the support as that's the work she does.
So I will just echo that for our COFA student, because when we started doing this recruitment efforts, we also started to provide very intentionally specific services for them. So when we did that, we eventually did cohort programs that was very tied to the recruitment efforts that we were doing in the islands. They went through an orientation process. They came to school earlier, and they were able to do a lot of learning how to kind of transition into the college, but also to the community, building the networks that they needed. And so with that, we've been able to see graduation rates that are over 70% with specifically some of our island students. So that's very exciting for us because we kind of meet a little bit closer to the national average. And really great for our COFA community. And that's part of why we come to these trips together, because she's the recruitment and I'm the retention piece and graduation. So it allows our departments to work together and ensure that the preparation that the students get and the messaging is there's accountability on the other end of the work. So yeah. So as Genesis mentioned, we do a lot of support services for the students, everything from advising to financial aid, scholarships, connecting them with other resources on campus, whether it's work study or jobs, internship, and then what happens after graduation. We're kind of involved in the students' journey, both academically and social support. A lot of times when students come from different cultural backgrounds, we really understand that the systems in place may not have had them in mind, right? That higher education was developed not necessarily with the Palauan student in mind. And so as we will go through there, we want to identify the challenges and the barriers, and then we want to address them. So Genesis in her department has done things around English proficiency and how to make the admissions process a lot more achievable for students. And then we work for ensuring advocacy while they're there. What are some of the barriers? Is living in is their living quarters something that can be made better? Just a fun thing that our students say is like after a month, they're like, we really don't want to eat bread anymore. Where can we get rice? So it can be anything that small to things around like making sure that their paperwork is in place, their ability to access financial assistance, support services in the community is available for them. So including tutoring, health services, counseling, and again, like career services as well.
Interesting, you mentioned financial assistance. As an advisor, you're also involved with students applying for the financial aid FAFSA and applying for or whatever scholarships that may be available.
Yeah, so we have obviously, registrars and financial aid offices that do a lot of that process, but we work very closely with them to ensure that they understand our students. They understand the COFA agreements, they understand their immigration statuses. Sometimes in universities, if they don't know kind of like what the compact agreement looks like, they might see our students as international students or even students who might not qualify for certain things. So part of the work that I do is really telling that story and helping the institution better understand that we do have access to these things and what are the documentation that allow them to be justified. So we really do a lot of advocacy around it, and we partner with many different departments, including financial aid, to offer scholarships, which now we have a COFA scholarship for our students. So we really encourage students to apply for the COFA scholarship that's within our institution, but we also then work with them to better understand how to navigate through working with our students as well when they're bringing in their documentation, their passports, and trying to make sure that their student aid reports is aligned to the aid that they receive. Sometimes they'll say, well, are they even qualified for work study? And so we work through making sure that they do get the work study that they need so they can have jobs on campus. So just some examples.
That's pretty good. I understand that we go to college and we go to universities to study and get our degrees. You've briefly explained the programs and the financial aid process and the help that is available. In terms of clubs and like support system that's there in the universities to help, especially like international students, what EOU has to offer?
We have over 70 clubs and organizations. We have a Navigator Pacific Island Club, but we also, one of the things that we love about our university, and Genesis was an active part of not only as a club but an advisor to some of the clubs, is any student who has an idea that they want to establish as a club can actually do that. So if you feel like there's something that's missing in the university, we really encourage students to talk about what that looks like and then try to promote putting that together, and we help them do that. So many of our students, for example, the Navigators Club, which was established years ago, when they came to EOU and they found that I want to go to a club that actually where I can talk about my culture, I can dance the dance I want to dance and share that information and also my culture. They established a club, and now 30 years later, we get 400-500 people who pay tickets to come and eat our food, and we get
Even
to
seen
cook our food.
videos on social media,
Yeah.
different programs.
Exactly, and we use them as ways to educate students on issues that are happening and the community, on what's happening in the islands. One year we did environmental climate justice, so people got to know like all the typhoons and the impact in the island communities. But also, like I said, any student can be a part of clubs. A lot of our students are involved in many different clubs. We also have like student government, so students can join student government. We have internships programs, and then I oversee some of the social justice type of work. So students can lobby, they can get involved in things that they're passionate about, where they think that there needs to be equity and inclusion in certain things, in certain processes, and they can advocate. In fact, this year we had some historical changes in renaming our library, so it could be more inclusive, and students will be able to see that it's representative of who is part of the university and not just kind of one population.
Could you describe you've talked about the university. Could you describe the town that university is at? Is it a small town? How's the environment, the weather?
Yeah. So again, we are in a town that only has 13,000 people. So
It's pretty much like the population of
yeah, so it's very similar, and the school sizes are the same. So LeGrand, Oregon, has about 13,000 people, and we are in the Grand Ronde Valley, which means I noticed when I was here, and I was just saying valleys. Some of the students were like, "What is this?" Maybe they're on valleys here. But we're in the Grand Ronde Valley, so you have to go over a mountain to get to LeGrand, and you have to go over a mountain to get out of LeGrand. So we're in a town that's completely surrounded by mountains. In the Grand Ronde Valley, LeGrand, Oregon sits right in the middle. We get all 4 seasons, so we get, right now it's over 100 degrees in LeGrand. And in the winter, I won't say how low the temperatures get, but it gets pretty cold, and there's lots of snow. We have a ski resort close by. And then we have fall and spring. So we get all 4 seasons. It's a beautiful area. Eastern Oregon University, the town is beautiful, the valley is beautiful, but the campus itself is absolutely beautiful. I think if you all attended any of our presentations, I know a lot of the students did, they were really amazed by how beautiful the area is. And they loved that it was small. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, they feel like they can connect with the area, because even though it's completely different than being here in Palau, it is still a small community. They feel like they won't get lost. So the small town really resonates with the students here, even though it's a completely different type of climate over there.
And can I just add that I think also one of the things I miss about Palau, of course, Palau is so much more beautiful, but the lush green that you still see in Eastern Oregon, that I think sometimes when I think about going to the US, it's a lot of like buildings and like the nature, and there's so much outdoor space that we have that allow for kind of that similar, different types of temperatures for sure, but there's so much green in the spring, and it just kind of reminds me of like all the green trees and everything that you have here. One thing I would say also is it's small enough that for a college town, it really focuses on that college environment and allows students to kind of keep their goals in achieving their education.
So
but
pretty
we're
much
also
the college is very part of the culture of the town.
Right,
yes,
for sure.
yeah, we're kind of in the middle
In
of
the center of the
yeah,
town.
of the town, yeah. But it's only an hour to like Washington, and so if you ever want to feel like you need like that city life, you can just kind of go there and then come back. And so I think there's you're not really secluded. You always have access to like being able to go shop, do other things, and then come back. So there's a balance that I feel like it makes it so much easier to adjust to.
You've shared that both of you are leaving on Sunday, Is that right?
Yes.
Have you been able to recruit a lot of students, or have you come across many students with interest of attending EOU?
We have. It's been overwhelming in a good way. It has been overwhelming how many students we've connected with. I feel every meeting we're in, we're saying, okay, we got to go to our next meeting. We have students waiting, or we have a teacher or a counselor waiting. So we have met with a lot of students. We started meeting with students on Monday. Monday we set up a lot of our meetings, and then this entire week we've met with a lot of students, a lot of athletes. I know the Palau Games just happened, so we met with a lot of the athletes. We did a big presentation at Palau Community College. And then every day we've had where students can come to the conference room at our hotel and apply to the university. So I would say it's been a very successful trip. We've met with a lot of great people, and a lot of students are planning to attend Eastern Oregon University this fall.
That's great news. We're nearing the end of our program. You both of you have explained the application process, the good news about the tuition that's is being lowered, and before we come to the end of our program, I would like to give you an opportunity, since you're in the admissions, to share some of like the tips for students to make sure, maybe in terms of their documents, and what do
Okay.
they have to have before coming to
Yes.
EOU.
Yes. I appreciate that you're bringing that up, because a lot of students, and I talked to a few students about this today, when we're here, it's easy to apply with us. We try to make it easy. I know it's not extremely easy, but it's easy enough to apply with us. But then when we leave, the students might feel a little lost again, right? Like, how do I get from Palau to tiny La Grande, Oregon, right? So there's some... we always deal with that right when we leave, right? We're not hearing from some students. But the tips I would have is, although we can't be here all the time, we are accessible to students. You can call us, you can email us, and we'll be available to help guide you. Even though we're not in person, we are here to figure out. So Genesis, we're going to get you from here to La Grande, Oregon. That's our jobs. That's literally what Beanie and I do. It's what our teams do in admissions and student diversity and inclusion. So the biggest tip I would say at this point is to keep it, if they're interested in attending EOU this fall, to keep in contact with us as we can help them. We can say, okay, now this is what you need for this scholarship. We even help support students as they apply for the Palau National Scholarship. We support them applying for scholarships at our university. So keeping in contact with us is key, because we can continue to give them the information they need on a daily or weekly basis.
And if they have documentation that they would require of us, that open communication allows us to know where they're needing those support, and we can provide that for them. I think one thing I would also talk, maybe I also do mentoring in the high school, and one thing I would talk to students about is some of the requirements for college includes math, social science, sciences, and English. So although I'm not familiar with how the high schools work, in the US, sometimes we can focus so much on electives and you miss some of those foundational classes. So I would encourage students to always make sure that they take their foundational classes, so they, at the end of graduation, they're able to have those classes. So it's not just the GPA that you're really looking at, you're also looking at, do you have 4 years of, or 3 years or 4 years of math, social science, and all of that. The other thing is that sometimes we think that there's an end date to going to college or in education, that really education is something that is, there's no end date. And so sometimes life happens, right? And that's okay. It changes your journey, and so that's fine. You can kind of do a little bit of adjustment and then reapply. The other last tip I would say is many times when we think of college, we think that we have to know exactly what we want, that I am going to be a lawyer, and some of those specialized I guess fields do require kind of knowing, but college, the first 2 years is general education course. It allows you to be marketable in the workplace, and that's part of those 2 years. And then you specialize during your junior and senior year when you want to really concentrate on your major. So we tell students, if you're not sure, that's okay. You could be exploring. Some of us have actually through those general education classes, we found where our like heart is, right, or where our passion is, and that is something that can happen while you're going to college.
Since you're at it, could you, you're a former EOU student, right? Is that correct? Could you share just your own personal experience of how you applied and how was the college experience for you at EOU?
So before I was a transfer student, I actually graduated to PCC, and I have to acknowledge that many people were my mentors and gave me great advice, not just family, but also people within like the school system here in Palau. Some of those good advice really helped me transition everything from saving money, making sure that I could try to be as independent as possible. When I transferred to EOU, so you're talking about like when I got there? When I transferred to EOU, obviously culture shock, right? Everything from I cannot find the food that I want to eat to just, the weather, it's too cold. And so how I adjusted a lot was really learning to make the smart decision of asking for help, which is a lot of times I grew up feeling like I didn't want that to be a barrier because when you accept an admissions letter, sometimes there's this idea that you should know what the next steps look like. So being able to have the ability to recognize where my resources were and then ask for those help that allowed me to be successful going to the tutoring because I could use that support, being able to find different jobs. We were sharing last night our stories around why college, but also our stories about college. And we talked a little bit, I didn't share too much of this, but I had to work like 3 jobs, and one of the jobs I worked in is the kitchen because it allowed me to eat free food and I never had to buy groceries. So we find smart ways to navigate through that, and also try to kind of gain our independence. I was a quiet student, so a lot of times I realized that I left Palau feeling like I wanted to go somewhere where nobody knew me so that they don't have to like recognize me and say, oh, that connection, right? We have so much like connections. And I went to Eastern Oregon and realized that I needed that. That was part of like my upbringing. And that actually really developed me to really like gain my voice. And I was able to talk to my professors. I remember my professor telling me when I go to the office hours and I tell him, because we would have classroom sessions and I'm sitting there and in my head I'm saying, so should you talk or should you not talk? Like that was actually, even when I knew the answers. And so I would actually go after class and say, Professor, this is what I think about the discussion. And he would say, why didn't you say that? Do you know how many students would benefit from hearing your perspective? It is so different. And it allowed me to see that we are not just getting an education, we're bringing to the college experience a much more enriching learning environment that sometimes we don't really recognize.
So by virtue of your seat, sitting at the center of this table, I'm gonna give you the last say. So what would you say to anyone who is looking for a college or a university to attend and they may not have had made their decision? how would you convince them to attend EOU, and why should they attend EOU?
Oh, that's a great question. I always tell students, I can't tell you that EOU is the perfect fit for you, right? Like I can't tell you that. But I would say the reason we could be a good option right now is because we're still accepting applications for this fall. And for all of the things we talked about. We're a small school in a small community. Connections, like one-on-one connections like this, can happen with the student and their faculty member, not as a senior, but that can happen as a freshman. And then affordability. I know that when an university is not affordable, it doesn't matter how great the university is, right? We could share about how great and beautiful our university is, how great the faculty and programs are. But if it's not affordable, the students don't have access to that. So all of the good things that EOU offers, combined with the affordability, that's why I truly believe we could be a good fit for students from Palau.
Great. Mga kuman masulang iti kita develop program kuman mulureng seringi tinagatero nga mo marara Sunday, and could you share one last bit of information if there is anyone who will listen to the program and who wants to contact both of you, maybe they have not come across you and would be interested to attend the EOU, how would they do that from now until
Sunday when we leave? That's a great point, because I've noticed, even though we've been here all week, there have been so many students who are only reaching out to us today. We're like, it's getting close to when we're leaving. But if we can include our emails, and as we post this kind of interview today, you can email me, I'm Genesis, and Beanie, reach out to us via email, and we would be willing and we would love to connect with you all before we leave on Sunday.
Kung malmusulang lulareng sa tiyak program ay kaya contact information tir malsuko mang gibong nga lot of the screen malsuko man so mil contact tir lo da kate lilo o message tir ilang tir camera ra Sunday mga nga and then hopefully if they could not reach you by Sunday and you leaving last
Email, yeah.
And they'll be in contact with you. Halsukum ko mamta so mura Eastern Oregon University. Mata ko man sulang etial mo lang sa ringa TMC Channel 38, a special program laban trial like special guest der gitam la Eastern Oregon University. Thank you, maigam sa program.